Good evening and welcome to tonight's Stride presentation Before We Say Goodbye, which is part of Positive East's Staying In Together programme. No one likes to think about how our lives will end, but in the spirit of providing end-to-end care at Positive East, tonight we'll be exploring the difficult subject of preparing for the end of life and what we can do to make sure we leave everything in order for those closest to us so we can move on to wherever we go with peace and tranquility. During the pandemic, we've seen too many clients in service who are struggling to cope with the basics of day-to-day living because they've lost a loved one, but they weren't prepared. Funeral costs, loss of tenancy, and inheritance rights can exacerbate the pain and grief. So today, we're going to look at what we need to do to make sure our loved ones' final wishes are met, and whether we can be of any practical use to society beyond our own living. We hope it's a long way off for all of us, but when the time comes, we want to help you get ready for one of life's events that's going to happen to all of us, but no one likes to talk about. So tonight on our distinguished panel, we have Positive East's own Simon Farris, who is Information and Advice Worker at Positive East, Jennifer Noel from Information Strategy and Development Manager from Compassion in Dying, and Tamara Vega is a Specialist Nurse in organ donation from UHCL. Good evening, guys. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
So Jen, if I can come to you first, I know you've got some information you've prepared for us. Can you just tell us a bit about your organisation and your role and what your remit is?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Jen and I work for a national charity called Compassion in Dying, and we support people to plan ahead for their future treatment and care so that they can live well right the way up until they die. So all the information that we provide and the support we provide is to make sure that you have the best treatment and care possible, which is in line with your wishes and your preferences, and to really provide practical support so you can record those. So that even if you can't speak for yourself, everyone will know what you want. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we do. Would it be all right to share some slides now, Greg?
Yeah, feel free.
Lovely. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of, it's going to be fun, isn't it? I'm going to try and do a slideshow. What we do, and then there's quite a lot of different options for planning. So I'm going to give an overview, but then please do get in touch for any individual support that you would like to get these things going. So like I said, our aim is to provide individuals with the space and time they need to get the support to plan for their future treatment and care. And it's all about putting you as the individual at the focus of any decisions that need to be made about your treatment and care. And the reason that planning ahead and writing things down is so important is because about 82% of us have really strong feelings about treatment and care we'd want, but only 4% of people have actually recorded them. And another huge problem we have is that 53% of people wrongly believe that a loved one can make a decision for us if we're not able to make decisions for ourselves. So that's a relative or a partner, and actually they don't have any legal rights to make treatment decisions for you if you aren't able to speak for yourself. So if we take all that into account by planning ahead, you're much more likely to get the treatment and care you actually want. It also, we know that it gives people peace of mind now. So we support people who are well and also unwell, but are worried that they might be given treatment and care they don't want, for example. And so that is a stressful thing to go through. So by planning now, it gives you peace of mind, you can get on with things. It's also really helpful for the people around you, so your loved ones, your relatives, your friends and your care team, to really know what you want so that they know they're making the right decisions for you if needed. And so this is something we often hear, people just can get on with their lives knowing that the future's planned out for them. So I'm going to give an overview of the three main ways you can plan ahead. Firstly, starting with an advance statement. So an advance statement is a record of anything that's important to you or your way of life. And that really is literally anything. So it should outline how you like to spend your time, your daily routine, where you'd like to live and be cared for. And that's for, the years and weeks and days up to the end of your life. Food preferences, religious and spiritual beliefs, the music you like to listen to, really anything that is important to you. And the reason that this is so important is that most of us will go through a time when we're not able to say exactly what we want, but we will need to be cared for. And so by writing it all down, people will really know what you do and don't want. This is a list of all of the things we've just said to bear in mind, and anything you really dislike. So people often use this to say things that they don't like doing, or music they don't like to listen to, or the fact that they don't want to be included in some sort of game, or even people that they aren't really keen on seeing regularly. So you can really write anything you want in your advance statement. Just to bear in, so the advance statement, it's not legally binding, but it does hold legal weight. So anything that you write in it needs to be taken into account by anyone caring for you. So that's the advance statement. The advance decision is a document you can use to refuse any medical treatments that you don't want to be given in the future. So it's a really important document, and we support people to make them who have a condition and who don't. And it's completely based on what your personal preferences are. But it can be used to refuse any treatment, including life-sustaining treatment, if you want to. Common treatments that are refused are things like CPR, clinically assisted nutrition and hydration, ventilation, and antibiotics for life-threatening infections. And this is, like I say, really important that you are making it exactly what you would want it to say, and that's why we have a specialist information nurse on our information line who you can call and talk through the form and make sure that you're refusing treatment exactly when you would want to. So you can be very specific about when you would want your refusal to kick in, for example. So the advance decision is a legally binding document, so it does have to be followed, and we have a free form which we help people to complete. It doesn't cost anything, you don't need to use a solicitor, and again it only applies if you lose capacity to make decisions for yourself. So while you are able to, you can decide to consent to or refuse treatment. So this form would only kick in if you weren't able to make decisions for yourself. For the advance statement and the advance decision, it's really important that they're shared widely once you've written them. And again, we're here to help. So if you want to call and talk through what's important to you, if you're not quite sure what you would and wouldn't put in the forms, then we're more than happy to kind of work through it with you, because it needs to be based on what quality of life means to you, because it's very individual to everybody. And then the third option that you have is a lasting power of attorney. So this allows you to give someone you trust the power to make decisions for you if you can't make decisions for yourself. So again, it would only kick in if you weren't able to make decisions for yourself. And this is where you can give someone the legal right to make decisions for you, like a loved one. There are two types. So one's for health and welfare decisions. So that's any decisions about your treatment and care. And then one is for finance, and obviously that's decisions about money and property. The most important thing with a lasting power of attorney is that you appoint someone you trust. They know you really well. They're going to be around to support you. They understand the responsibility. They might need to make, decisions daily for weeks or months or years. And so if you don't have someone that fits that bill, then you shouldn't make one, basically. There's lots of other ways that you can plan, like we've already been through. So it's really just for someone who knows that they have someone they trust to make decisions for them. So they're the kind of three main ways that you can plan ahead. And the best way to start doing those things is to have a think about what is most important to you. And working through the advanced statement form is a really nice way of doing that. It has lots of prompts to get you to think about the things you would and wouldn't want to happen. And then the next step is to have those important conversations with people. And Greg started by saying that we're covering a really difficult topic tonight, which is planning for the end of life. But it doesn't have to be difficult if you're well prepared, but it is really important. So it's always important, but it's not always difficult. So the best thing to do before you start having conversations with other people is to make sure that you've got a clear understanding of what is important to you and what you would want to happen, and then picking the right time to talk to those people. So you might want to have a look at the forms first, you might want to fill some of it out, you might want to have a chat to us, And then once you're clearer, find the right time when people have time and aren't rushed. Make sure that you warn people what you want to talk about, including your doctors, because doctors can be taken off guard by talking about these things as well. So, you know, you want to talk to them about your future treatment and care and how you're going to be looked after. And that gives them time to prepare as well. And then be patient. These conversations can take time. They can also take a couple of tries. So it's all about making sure that you're clear on what you want and then giving it enough time to talk to people about it. So what's next? Like I said, thinking through what's most important to you is the first step. We're here to help at any point. Like I said, we have a free information line. The forms are there. We also have printed resources, which you might want to have a read through, which we can email or post out to you. And then the next step is to start writing things down. And that's really important because even if you tell people close to you, if you haven't written them down, there's no record. And then talking to friends, family or doctors, if you want to, it's a really good idea if you can. And then, yeah, contacting us if you need any help. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of the things that we do. And I've said any questions, but I actually think we're going to move on. So I'll stop sharing my screen and then you can ask me any questions at the end.
Jen, that was great. So much information there. I just don't know where to start with this. I've got a couple of questions, if I may, just to clarify. When is the right time to do this? Do we wait till we get a diagnosis, or do we do it when we're fit and healthy, or when's the right time?
It's a great question. So the right time is now. You don't need to be unwell and you don't need to be near the end of life at all. In fact, the most important thing is you plan while you can. So while you're very clear about what you want and while you're able to record it and talk to people. So if it helps, I have an advanced decision and an advanced statement and a lasting power of attorney, because I know that if I ever got to a certain quality of life, then I would, for example, want to refuse certain life-sustaining treatment. So now is the time, Greg.
Excellent. Have you done it? Are you prepared for your own death this way, Jen?
Yeah, I have done all of those forms, so have it all in place.
Some great advice there. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker now. We're going to talk to our own Simon Farris. Simon and I worked together for many years, and he's an information and advice worker at Positive East, and he's going to talk to us today about making wills and benefits and things in financial situations that we need to consider when we're reaching the end of our life. Sam, good evening. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Greg. Good evening. I don't think there's really much to say about myself. You kind of said it for me. I'm Simon. I work in the information and advice service team at Positive East. I've worked for Positive East now for about 20 years, since 2000. So tonight, moving on, there are two things really I'm going to talk about. One is about making a will, or at least give an overview about the importance of making a will, and the other is what happens when you die if you are in receipt of any benefits. Okay, so to start off with, in terms of making a will, it's important to consider making a will, whether or not you consider that you have many possessions or much money. That making a will is easy. There are different ways of doing so. For example, you could ask a solicitor. If you're working and you're a member of a union, some unions will have a free of charge service. And perhaps you might even want to do one by yourself. There's lots of information available online. In particular, the Citizen Advice website is a good go-to place. They've got lots of information about the various stages of going about doing a will and the pros and cons. But I thought I'd start off by looking at some things that you should consider. And the first is that if you die without leaving a will, there are certain rules which will dictate how any money, property or possession that you have should be allocated. And these are called the rules of intestacy. It's not the easiest of words to pronounce. And this may not be the way that you would have wished that your money and possessions to be distributed. If you're not married or not in a civil partnership, then you won't be able to inherit from each other unless there is a will, or you own property jointly. Therefore, the death of one partner may create serious financial problems for the remaining partner if you don't have a will. If you have children, you will need to make a will so that arrangements for the children could be made should either parent die. Good news is that if you do make a will, then your married or civil partner, your children, relatives and friends will inherit whatever provisions you make for them. However, as mentioned before, if you don't make a will, then unfortunately your married or civil partner will inherit all or some of your estate, but that will be subject to the rules of intestacy. If you do make a will, it's important to remember that any changes of circumstances, you should be, amend your will in the event of any changes of circumstances, such as if you separate from your partner. Otherwise, if you don't, then any previous will that you, the other thing to consider is that if you separate and then you remarry or you enter into a new civil partnership, then will make any previous will that you have made invalid. So it's just to emphasize the point of, changing your will if there are any material change of circumstances. And lastly, but importantly, is that you will need to name an executor. So that's going to be someone who will be responsible for carrying out your wishes and for sorting out your estate. That person will have responsibility to collect together all of your assets or the assets of your estate, deal with all paperwork and pay all debts, taxes, funerals and administration costs out of the money in your estate. So in terms of who can be your executor, that could be anybody really. It could be relatives, friends, solicitor or accountant. But if it's going to be a friend, then good advice is to talk with them before going ahead making a will and naming them as your executor, because they might not want to be your executor. I think that's about it really in terms of making a will. The upshot, I guess, really for me, the takeaway from this is that is going back to, if you want to ensure that your loved ones inherit from your estate and that there are no arguments, make a will. And it's easy to make a will. It really is easy. I did a search recently on this. I'm not an expert in this area, and I was quite blown away by the amount of advice that's available and how straightforward it is as well. But it's just about formalising it. That's the important thing. In terms of what happens in the event of your death, and if you're receiving any benefits, again, this is quite straightforward, surprisingly straightforward. There's a service called a Tell Us Once service, which is available from the DWP and several local authority departments, and that's available in most of England and Wales. For example, if you contact the Tell Us Once service to report the death of someone, what they will do is they will notify all offices or departments paying any benefits to the person who passed away, as well as other government agencies such as the Passport Services and the DVLA. You can contact the Tell Us Once service either face-to-face through your local authority, or via a free phone number. Now, because these numbers do tend to change, what I would advise anybody to do is just, go online and just type in "tell us once," or even just type in "what do I do if someone dies and are receiving benefits," and it's surprisingly straightforward finding that type of information. But the otherwise, just remember DWP website, or the gov.uk website, gov.uk website. Lots of information. It's easy to find the information from there. If you do contact the DWP, if you're living in England and Wales, especially if you go through the Tell Us Once service, they will put you in contact with the bereavement service, and that basically covers, what they will do, the bereavement service will do a benefit check to find out if your next of kin will be able to claim any benefits, such as bereavement allowance, and also if they can claim for a funeral payment. This will all be done by telephone, so it's quite straightforward. So again, it's the Tell Us Once service, and that's available through local authorities, the DWP, and as I said, you can find it on the gov.uk website.
Great.
That's it for me.
Again, loads of really useful practical information there. Simon, I have a question. A lot of our service users have been rejected by society for whatever reason, and experience a lot of loneliness and isolation, and they don't have any next of kin. What happens to our possessions and to our bodies if we die without anyone there to pick up the pieces?
I don't know about what happens to your body, but in terms of your possessions, again, if you don't leave a will, then the rules of intestacy will apply. Now, this is quite complicated, so I'm not going to go into great detail here, but basically what it means is that your estate will be divided up, will be divided and shared amongst any relatives who come forward to say that they want a share of your estate. And there are rules about what relatives can inherit and the percentage of your estate that they can inherit.
So if there are no relatives, does it just go straight to the state?
It will just go straight to the state, exactly.
We don't want that. Simon, fascinated. So if anyone's got any questions about Simon's presentation, we're going to be putting the emails out and the chat, so please feel free to have a look at that. So we looked at before we die, and then we've looked at making a will. So now we're going to look beyond our own death, and this is where I'd like to invite our next speaker, Tamara Vega, to come in. Tamara is an organ donor nurse, and she works for the NHS. She's going to tell us a little bit about what we can do, because people with HIV can donate their organs, can't they, Tamara?
Yeah, they can. First of all, thanks, Greg, for inviting me onto this. It's great to be able to speak with you guys. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a specialist nurse in organ donation, and part of my role is getting referrals from hospitals for potential donors that are in intensive care or A&E, supporting families through end of life and having those difficult conversations, offering organ donation, and then going on to potentially finding recipients, speaking to transplant centres and going to theatres. So we kind of do right from the beginning to the very end. And I just wanted to give you a few bits of stats, really. So like Greg says, you can donate if you have HIV. It's not what we call an absolute contraindication, and in fact since 2000 we've had 10 donors that have gone on to help 10 recipients, and that's with life-changing and life-saving surgeries. So that's been 2 people out there in the UK that have taken kidneys and livers from HIV donors, which is amazing. And we yeah, it's just, you know, the thing that we really sort of try and say to people way before we get to the point of end of life is making this decision now about whether you want to be an organ donor. And it's really just to impress upon you guys that just because you might have HIV, it doesn't stop you from being an organ donor. And we would support our families and friends and families through end of life. Yeah, sorry, and I was meant to have a presentation and I'm doing this in the car, so I'm all over the place with my presentation, so apologies everyone.
Not at all. I mean, that shows you're committed. I'm sure you've been very busy in the NHS, so you know, we love the NHS and we're just so glad that you've given us your time today. That shows what committed, testament to your commitment to your job.
But what I would say to all of you is, you know, once you've finished with this discussion tonight, is have a look at the organ donor register. If you haven't made your decision known about whether you want to be a donor or not, is to sign up, and it's very easy to do that. But the most important thing out of all of that is letting your loved ones know what your decisions are, so that if it ever comes to the end, that burden of making that decision on your behalf is taken off of their hands, and they know exactly what it is that you want to do in your end of life. So essentially what I'm saying is, make your wishes, make your decision known on the organ donor register.
Great. So just from a clinical viewpoint,
Yeah.
isn't it a risk people donating their organs when they have HIV?
There is a risk. Absolutely, there is a risk, and I would say all of the time it goes from HIV donor to HIV recipient. And there are a few, you know, having spoken to a few transplant centres around the country, there are a few people living with HIV that are on the transplant list. So it is a risk, it is a higher risk. But like I say, it's not something that we exclude right off the bat. We do lots of work, background checks, sort of behind the scenes, whilst we're looking for potential recipients. So we always make sure that the transplant is safe. But yes, it's not stopped people from donating and from people receiving organs. And, you know, just some feedback from a couple of the transplant centres that, you know, some of the donors that have received kidneys have just, their life has changed, because before they'd be going to the hospital for dialysis 3 times a week, and it would take up their whole day. They wouldn't be able to work. Their mental state would be just in their boots. It was just impacting their life totally. And to take that away and to just live a normal life is incredible. So you know, when we say it's life-changing, it really is life-changing.
So for those of us that have HIV, it's the process for donating organs, is it exactly the same as if we didn't have HIV?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to a potential patient that is given to us, we do exactly the same checks for someone that, you know, if someone had HIV, if they didn't have HIV, you know, but there's just a bit more that we would do in terms of, you know, speaking with their doctor, just making sure that if they're on medications, that they've been taking the medications, you know, checking their blood work and so on. So there's a few steps that we would be doing, but, you know, no more than if someone else had a cancer history, we would be doing exactly the same.
I'll ask you another clinical question. We know about resistance to HIV meds. Would that be a problem if somebody has developed resistance to one specific type of medication and put on another, but the recipient was on the previous meds? Does that make sense?
Right, I do. I know what you mean, because I know that, you know, people are immunocompromised when they're taking their antiretrovirals. I have to say I'm not particularly au fait with the sort of the medical side of it, sort of the medicine side of things. So I'd hate to even answer that. But that's certainly something that the transplant surgeons would be looking at to sort of, to ensure that if they are on the medication, are they on the right ones? They'd be speaking to their HIV doctors to sort of work together to see what would be the best ones if an HIV recipient ended up getting an organ from someone. So those things are definitely considered.
Thank you. So my final last question. I don't think anyone was going to receive my organs.
Do you know what?
I'm sure they're in
says
I'm sure they're in I just don't want to know. If organ donation isn't right for us, what else can we do with our bodies? This is open to the whole panel now. What about donating our body to science or to research? Because a lot of our service users have had HIV for a long time. So I personally would like to donate my body to help clinicians understand the effects of long-term meds and so on. Would that be an option for people with HIV? And how could they access this if that's what they desired?
I can certainly signpost it because it's a question that has been asked to us as the organ donation service. And I know in the past, speaking with medical schools, it's a process and it takes months, if not, over a year to organize. But if that's something that you'd want to do, you'd want to start now in terms of organizing that. But I can find some information out and send you that, Greg.
Great.
To
can
find
put that
out
in our newsletter.
Yeah.
Jen, can I bring you back in and can I put that question to you?
Yeah, sure. I'm really sorry. There's just a very large rainstorm happening, so I'm sorry if you can hear it.
No.
Yeah, so we do get that question a lot, and it basically kind of depends on the area you're in and how often places need you, but you can get in touch with local universities and local medical schools. Or if you want to get in contact with Compassion in Dying, then we'd be happy to kind of support you to find something local to you that would help.
Excellent. So if anyone has any questions about these, forward them to me or send them directly to Jen Noel at Compassion in Dying. Okay, panel. I think we're about done. Sorry, Sam.
I've raised my hand. Sorry.
I didn't say sorry, man.
No, that's all right. It's all right. It's a question for tomorrow. Sorry, tomorrow. I know you're probably itching to get home.
No, it's all right.
It was. I was thinking that when it comes to organ donations, we tend to think of it when somebody's passed away. And I wondered, is like, for example, kidney transplants, is that something you would be able to do whilst you are alive?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Simon. So there is a living donation program. And so, yes, you can donate either altruistically or sort of through family. You can donate a kidney whilst still alive, and also you can donate part of your liver as well whilst still alive. Again, that's not something that I'm heavily involved in, but again, if someone's interested in being a living donor, I can certainly send Greg the details in relation to that. But yeah, that's a good question, and yes, you can donate your kidneys when you're alive and liver.
Okay, guys, that was fascinating insight. We've got loads packed with really useful information there, so I hope that you guys found it useful. If any of you got any questions you'd like to ask me on this, please feel free to send them in to me. So Jennifer Noel from Compassion in Dying, Tamara Vega, Specialist Nurse, UCLH, Simon Farris, Positive East. I'd like to thank you all very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.